All right. So let's do the thing. Again, I'll make a copy of the backpacking gear list for us. For those of you who are not familiar with that general list of stuff, the big 40,000-foot view of like how we're going to live on summer camp, kind of regardless of the site, is here in Carbondale. We're going to have a week-ish of kind of day trips, short-range trips to Land Between the Lakes National Recreation Area over in Kentucky, which is huge for fishing and hunting and four-wheeling and all of that stuff. There's a 1850s era living farm, like people work it using 1850 style stuff, and they grow and use their own tobacco and salt pork and all that. It's a pretty cool deal over at Land Between the Lakes. But that's all kind of Midwest, kind of mainline forestry, wildlife, watersheds, a little bit of urban forestry, a little bit of forest rec stuff here. And what summer camp is going to do here in the Midwest first week, and then we'll get you out of your usual context for most of us and go, in this case, out west for the Grand Start, and learn a heck of a lot real fast. Not just about forestry and not just about the specific places we go. You're going to learn a heck of a lot about yourself and kind of answer some questions you didn't know you had yet on, like, would I be happy in a place like Carbondale versus working at the Grand Canyon, doing exactly the same job title, exactly the same responsibilities, but it, as the Zoomers say, hits different when you're in a different place, a different culture. There's certainly a lot of different cultures embedded around the United States. We're going to go to places like some Native American reservations if you've never been. We're going to see how our fellow Americans in some pretty different places live much the same and really quite differently. And that includes doing forestry afield. Doing wildland fire management in some ways looks exactly the same on the Shawnee as it does at like the Arapahoe National Forest or the Roosevelt or Manti La Salle or Fish Lake. In some ways, it's a whole other planet. And so I want you to see that stuff and see how mostly familiar and recognizable it is and be like, oh yeah, with my SIU Forestry degree, I could go do this. And we're going to run into a ton of SIU forestry alums working at these places. Like, they go out here right after they graduate and they do this stuff. So I want to demystify that for you, get some friendly and familiar faces and on your professional networks, and some people that email and call and be like, what do I do next? I got to graduate, and all of that. Questions?
Should the first week when we stay around here, are we still going to be off campus? Or are you going to drop it like at the end of the day we kind of disperse back to where we live?
What you just said. So typically the first week, folks who are in the dorms, but they got to move out like by the end of exam week. So that would be like the Saturday, Sunday right before camp starts. We'll have folks like move into their summer apartments or couch surf with friends or move in with a family member nearby and kind of just move back and forth. Or we have a lot of people who will camp at Giant City or Touch Nature or something like that. You know, it's kind of fine. Really, however you want to do that is okay. And people do any of the above. So that's generally how we solve that first week question. Heading out of the weekend?
Yeah.
Have a good weekend.
Meeting here.
Yeah.
Excited about summer camp.
Yeah. Anything's better than Zoom.
Anything's better than Zoom. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope everything goes our way and this works out.
Yep. We're trending in a good direction. And then we'll pile into several vehicles and roll. Generally speaking, we try to go for as few engines running as possible. A, to limit our gas costs, but B, to limit our carbon footprint. We are going to go about 5,000 to 6,000 miles in a big old old sort of fever dream of a journey. So that's cool, but that does come with some associated impacts. We want to be aware of that and then make the trip count because of that. There's nothing that happens kind of for free. So I hope that this trip kind of gives you permission, inspiration, lights a spark to go do some forestry stuff, and in so doing, pull some carbon out of the air. You know? I think foresters are uniquely positioned to have a career that makes life a little bit easier and better and more stable for everybody generations to come going forward versus like flipping burger somewhere or whatever. Okay. Yeah, question.
If we do have a job lined up and it starts around there, or it ends, or the trip ends near where we're working, can we drive out ourselves and like bring along our own gear and then from there leave on forward?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is totally an option. If you have another way to get your vehicle there or don't need a vehicle, we can drop you off on the way back home. We do that pretty much every year because there are a bunch of our students who do summer stuff out west or up in the Northeast when we go up there. And it makes a lot of sense. Like, I don't want to drive you 2,000 miles back and then you drive 2,000 miles. So you're welcome to bring your personal vehicle. It's a lot of gas. So if we can find, for example, a place for you to bring it and then stash it, maybe. It's a big lollipop loop along Interstate 70 into Colorado, and then we'll go through this huge loop. So we'll come back to Interstate 70. Yeah. So if we can drop your vehicle there, you're welcome to do that. Save some gas money, couple thousand miles worth.
Yeah.
So a couple $100. And if you, for whatever reason, you want to bring your vehicle the whole way through, we've had a couple of students over the years do that too, for various reasons. So that's all fine. Other questions so far? Otherwise, I'll kind of take us through the list. I put the tentative list of most of the spots we can choose from. I left off a bunch of the smaller state parks and forests, stuff like that, because it's already it's like a 2-page long list of places to go, people to see, things to do. It's going to be wild. We are going to go hard on Rec Summer Camp. My impression of Resource Camp is that it is every bit as good. It is a different animal. They don't travel quite as far. They do 2 weeks local, 2 weeks long distance, and the long distance portion pretty much is out and back to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. So yeah, if you're a LambCon or watersheds or urban forestry person, you're free to pick either one, and it's a good, meaningful choice either way. So obviously I'm super biased towards Rec Camp. I think it's a million times better, but I gotta acknowledge they're both really good classes. So there's that. What other questions do you have? Otherwise, we'll run kind of through the itinerary a little bit. All right, cool. So we'll do local stuff: Shawnee, Lust Creek, Panther Den, Crab Orchard, Giant City. Kind of a bunch of the usual suspects to help connect the dots. Meet some forestry alums who've done that fabled thing of going to school for forestry here and then working on the one national forest we got around here, which also happens to be one of the smallest national forests in the country. We're going to go to some crazy huge ones out west, and everything's just on a different scale up there. So that's about that first week, and that has been in past years as short as about 3 days, and in some years, Rec Camp also stretches out to about 2 weeks local. This year, I'm targeting about 1 week. We will, after we head out from local stuff, we'll go to Land Between the Lakes, spend a day or two there. So that's typically a 1 or 2 night overnight trip. So we get 3 days on site there. There's a ton of stuff. And then we'll head out west from there. And while we're out west, of course, we're there on Saturdays and Sundays during intercession as well. And we'll have we'll have some 0 days or time off days in there to catch up, do some laundry, do stuff that's not like part of the class or whatever. So if you want to rent a Hummer for a day and go climbing up some sandstone walls, be my guest. I put machine gun ranges on the list of stuff to do around Moab because that's a thing. Like, it's kind of expensive. Ammo is insane right now. But if you wanna shoot your shots and mag dump some legit actual fully automatic firearms, that's just like a thing to do out west. It's different. And most of the rest of the time we're gonna be car camping, but with some options to push off into wilderness areas like the actual canyon of the Grand Canyon. So if you're a gonzo hiker and you want to do some hiking and some like backcountry canyoneering, some like legit overland pathfinding and even trackless area exploration and navigation, those are options for you. If you're not even sure what some of those words mean and you're not real comfortable with that, you can, at your option, try those things on in kind of a medium setting of craziness. Or if you're just genuinely not about that stuff, there's always a base camping option. So if you really don't want to do a mile of vertical change into and out of the Grand Canyon or see the far rim by your own sweat equity, then chill among the full-size elk herd running through the campground, sometimes literally running through the campground at Grand Canyon and South Rim Village. There's multiple like world-class level lodges there. Like, you can have steak every night on summer camp at the Grand Canyon if you have more money than sense and you're not feeling backpacking, right? Like, you're not going to offend me. My job here is to get you to these places, get you in front of the top level rangers and foresters and wildland firefighters. We'll have some conversations. You can try some things out. You can do some things that you already love, and you can't help but learn a bunch of stuff the whole way through. So it's not going to be a bunch of quizzes and stuff like that. It's not a final exam for this class. It's a learn by doing, and you can do as much or a lot less than maximum according to your comfort and fitness and health condition level and all that stuff, and this question always eventually comes up. Yes, you can drink on summer camp. Moab has a ton of amazing microbreweries and stuff like that. We're going to some desert places. So for those of you who grew up in the Midwest like me and you've never spent time out in the desert, alcohol dehydrates you, right? It's a diuretic. It makes you pee more. And if you drink a lot of alcohol, it makes you vomit, which really dehydrates you. Okay? And in the desert, if you decide to go wilderness backpacking, for example, on the high end, at the hotter end of summer camp, and in places like the bottom of the Grand Canyon, your body needs you to drink up to about 2 gallons of water and electrolytes a day. No joke. So that's like a liter every hour that you're backpacking, which sounds like a lot because it is a lot. That's 4 times what we would normally drink just going around or going about our business here in Carbondale. So that interfacing with alcohol, if you're not particularly experienced with paying attention to your body's legitimate needs to stay alive, that can present a bit of a problem if you collapse in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. We have seen bodies, like dead bodies, helicoptered out, packed out, slumped over on the mule train that they used to do trail work in the Grand Canyon. One year we rolled up right as they were fishing a grandma's body out. She had dove into the Colorado River to try and save her grandson who had gotten swept away in a rapid. They never found the kid, but we got to see grandma get pulled out. So this is like a live fire exercise kind of thing, safety off. This is the real deal out there. So all that long preamble to say, you're all adults, and I'm going to treat you like that. And we're going to be passing through some legalization states. You're welcome to partake in that stuff. as long as it's responsible and you're not tripping balls in front of the like the professionals and the alums that we're going to go meet. That's rarely a problem, but when it's a problem, it's a big problem. And you know, same goes with alcohol. Like, don't be an idiot; you'll be fine. So yeah. All right, enough of that sermonizing. Let's go through that itinerary. All right, so we talked about the Easter stuff. Out west, we have basically we'll file into the vehicles, and because this is not a grasslands class, I'm not going to spend much time in these so-called flyover states of Missouri and Kansas and so forth. We are at the tail end of that. We have the option of going to a place like the Comanche National Grasslands. So that's like Illinois Prairie, but here in Illinois, we've lost and farmed away about 99% of our OG tallgrass prairie. Out there, they still have gazillions of acres of it, and it's open range. So things like feral horses and ponies can just run all over the place and do things. And that's kind of an interesting way to kick things off. It's flat and there's a lot of grass. I don't know what else to say about the Comanche grasslands. From there, we can stop by the Florissant fossil beds, which are kind of south and east of Denver. The eastern 1/3 of Colorado is pancake flat. And then you get the Front Range, kind of where Rocky Mountain National Park is. And then you've got the Rockies, just like range, running westward from there. And this place called Florissant Fossil Beds is a paleoforest site where there are tree stumps that are fossilized the size of your 2-car attached garage. I mean, they're insane. And actually fern stumps, back when ferns, cycads, grew to be the size of what we would consider to be like giant sequoia and stuff like that. So from Florissant Fossil Beds, we kind of dip south and west around Denver, and we exit the end of the loop 3 weeks later by passing through Denver on our way home. And we'll go to Great Sand Dunes National Park and Preserve. So there's this beautiful, steep, north-south running mountain range called the Sangre de Cristos, the Blood of Christ Mountains, which get this sunset alpenglow as the sun sets in the west. It's like deep red, fiery mountains. And then there's this almost perfectly circular dune sea, Great Sand Dunes, with some of the tallest dunes in North America. And some years when we kind of skip Florissant Fossil Beds and drive from Carbondale straight to Great Sand Dunes, we'll start by jogging because everybody's excited to be out of the buses. But we'll end by plodding because walking up a sand dune that's 700 feet high is fucking exhausting. And then we watch the sunrise, and it's amazing. That's pretty cool. And from there, we want to understand that we are in high altitude Colorado. So on the hot end, those dunes will hit 140 degrees. They are genuinely lethal during hot days. So we have to be off the dunes by about 10, 11 a.m., depending on the day. On the cold end, we will have snow on our tents, waking up after our first night there. So the low end of temperatures is about 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So as you are thinking about a sleeping bag and stuff like that, a cheap Walmart cotton insulated bag for $35 says on the label, survival rating 35 degrees. That's not comfy at 35 degrees, and we might be going down to 20. Being in a double-walled, with a fly-on-top tent can add about 5 degrees of temperature to your environment. Buddying up with somebody can add a couple more degrees and so forth as well. But you want a sleeping bag and a ground mat that are rated for 20 degrees. So 20 degrees comfort rating if you want to not hate yourself and hate me. 20 degrees survival rating if you are, you know, maybe pinching pennies a little bit more, or can't get your hands on a 20 comfort rating bag. Cool. All right, so from Great Sand Dunes Park and Preserve, we go through kind of that's kind of like southern central Colorado, and then from there we go to the southwest quadrant of Colorado, which is also kind of a squarish state. We'll go through places like Pagosa Springs, where there's a bunch of dirt worshiping tree huggers and hippies and stuff like that. But it's also kind of like a western, my spurs go jingle, jangle, jangle kind of place. And then into Durango, Colorado. You may have heard of that. A bunch of our forestry alums have kind of been in and around Durango. There's a couple of national forests real close to there. The Animas River is real close to Durango, and we can, if the class is interested in that, go whitewater rafting. So if you've never done that before, it's instructive to see how people think about forest watersheds in terms of how we're going to use this thing. The Animas River is a super fun whitewater rafting trip. And you raft right into town, so you don't have to like walk in your boat shoes 3 miles through the wilderness. So that's nice. You go get fish tacos afterwards. From Durango, we've got a couple of options in the cultural history side of things. If enough students taking the class are interested in like the human forest uses in paleo times and historic times, places like Mesa Verde, so that Cliff Palace, where some Chacoans used basically, you know, like the rock shelters we have around the Shawnee. It's almost exactly like that, except they're on the walls in sort of mesa formations. And they used those to kind of keep away from rodents where they were caching their corn and maize stalks and stuff like that. There's also the Aztec ruins place, which is like a Pueblo palace, but it's just at ground level. Where you can see stuff like that. Those are kind of right along our path, but not everybody every year is as interested in that stuff as things like they want to see the big game. They want to be hunting outfitters and guides and stuff like that, or fly fishing guides. So in the case that, you know, most students are less interested in that, we'll kind of drive right by those. We'll be close to them, but we can pass them on by, so we have a little bit more time on target for other things. Like I've already mentioned, elk at Grand Canyon. There are elk and caribou at Rocky. There's, I mean, all sorts of western trout, fly fishing, that kind of thing, at a bunch of these places. We can swing by Tuba City, which is, and go to a legit Native American, like, actual trading post. If you guys are familiar with those and interested in that kind of thing. A couple of our graduate student recent alums, one current is busy helping one of the Native American nations, Navajo, figure out how to do whitetail and muley habitat management, because, you know, for them it's less fun big game recreation and more like, this is our way of life. Like, this is how we do. And relative to climate change, that's getting harder. Some of the good habitat for those is experiencing what's called a sky island effect, where the habitable range starts moving its way up the mountain, and eventually as things get real hot, that habitat range gets pushed off the top of the mountain, and then everything dies. So climate change is a thing, and it has a little bit of a different equation in the American Southwest, in forests and more arid areas like woodlands and grasslands, than it does here. But it's also good practice for us, because by the end of your lifetime, Southern Illinois is going to have the climate of Southern Oklahoma. So let's just camp on that for a sec. Like, that's happening. That's what we're earning right now with our trajectory. We can avoid that, but less and less likely the slower we do it. All right. So from kind of the Colorado-Utah border, we go from a legalization state to a super mega ultra conservative state, Utah. Remember that. And at one point, we'll talk about that later. All right, so right around there, we have like Monticello, Utah. So we'll be real close to Moab and Arches National Park and Canyonlands. There's some amazing backpacking or day hiking if you're less interested in carrying all your stuff around. Truly some world-class stuff. There's close to maybe over 100 miles of slot canyon, like narrow, steep walled canyons where you go up one canyon and do a little bit of free climbing, drop down the head of the next canyon and go winding around there. There's like 100 miles of those trails within like 5 or 10 miles of the visitor center at Canyonlands. It's all just like wrapped in around itself like a bunch of intestines. And so it's super fun. And that's one of the places where we have to break down our group sizes to less than everybody on camp altogether. So, for example, if I'm kind of grating on your nerves by that point and you just want to get away from the professor, you can jump in one of the other groups and I won't see you for a little while. And that's fine. It's nice to kind of change up the faces that you're pressed up against the whole time for summer camp. So from there, we'll swing kind of south and west by southwest towards the Grand Canyon. We'll do some forest soil stuff, maybe dig a few small soil pits to talk about kind of soil structure and composition and how, just like mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, nothing works without forest soils. And then we'll take some of our soil pits, we use them as borrow pits. Where we hit clay layers, they tend to be highly shot through with brightly colored oxides, like iron oxide, sulfur dioxide, like that, so bright colors. And one thing we can do if you guys are interested is we can make some kind of called dirt shirts, basically tie-dye with natural dyes. Not quite as bright as like neon or whatever, but super cool. But yeah, in the past we found green, yellow, orange, red, purple, ochre. We even found blue one time, gray. Like there's all sorts of weird colors in the soils out west. We're gonna be real close to a place called the Painted Desert. So we probably won't have the time to get that far south, but being close to a place called the Painted Desert is a clue that the geology and soils, you know, it's pretty brightly colored. So south rim of the Grand Canyon, you can go into the Grand Canyon if you want, stay up on the rim. Go to the north rim, which is half a mile higher than the south rim, and see a beautiful old ponderosa forest with elk and bison, unless we get snowed out by another polar vortex in June. That happened in 2019. We'll go on to some Bureau of Land Management areas around Glen Canyon Dam and Antelope Canyon, if you want to Google for that, one of the prettiest, most sort of famously picturesque canyons, hikes around there. The Oak Range has a big Ziploc baggie filled with all sorts of rifle and pistol rounds. People do anything on BLM land. You can kind of do anything on BLM land. I'm joking 220 about, like, if you want to ramp your four-wheeler off the desert tortoise while firing AK-47 fuel-wielding 360 no-scopes, like that's your shot. People do that stuff. Anyway, another story for another time. Please don't do that off the desert tortoises.
Has that happened, or seems like it might be sparked from something?
Yeah. Also fashioning spears and hunting for dinner on summer camp.
All right.
Don't do that. There are probably regulations that we're breaking with that. Anyway, so we get around the north rim of the Grand Canyon. That puts us in a place called the Grand Staircase, the Escalon, which is a huge terraced geological step platform. We're at the bottom of that, at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. We're at the top of that as we go through Zion National Park, where all the All the lodges and stuff are down at the bottom of the canyon. There's a beautiful sort of cliff perch hike called Angel's Landing. We'll have 1,000-foot cliffs on about 300 degrees around you. We'll have class and lunch one day there. There's the upcountry with a bunch of beautiful, beautiful rock formations and pinyon juniper, woodland and forest management, wildfire management. And we'll finish up at Zion. We'll go to Bryce Canyon, which is all those bright orange rock spires. Get really nice at sunrise and sunset. A lot of big game just wandering around there as well. Bryce is pretty small, so we're not going to spend more than a day or two there. That's a fairly quick stop. And then we're cycling north. Around then we'll be by the Fish Lake National Forest. We'll talk about the Tonto National Forest a little bit further away, and so forth. And then we're cycling back towards Goblin Valley State Park, where there are a bunch of hoodoos and people pushing rock columns over on each other and all kinds of nonsense. And then that's sort of wrapping back on the Grand Cirque, and we're back by Moab. So usually we do Moab later versus towards the front. And then we'll spend the better part of a week around, again, Moab, Arches, Canyonlands, and then rolling back eastward towards the Front Range of the Rockies and finishing up at Rocky Mountain National Park, which is an amazing, amazing spot to cool off and rehydrate and see a bunch of green landscape and blue landscape instead of like brown and orange and yellow and red Navajo sandstone formations, and so forth. So then we roll home, and everybody's pretty exhausted by that point, but for a lot of great reasons. And everybody showers off and pivots towards summer work and all that stuff. Cool. We'll have you back for summer jobs. Summer classes don't formally start until the Monday after intersession or summer camp is over. And because we'll be on the road for at least two weekends in the middle of intersession, I'll try and bring you guys and gals back a day or two early. So like Wednesday or Thursday of our fourth week, instead of like end of business Friday, like down to the buzzer, because some of you guys got to get on to your next thing pretty fast. So forth. So that's the itinerary. We got plenty of time for questions. Again, I'll Xerox off the gear list or send out a digital copy for you, however you want that. Some of those things on the gear list are required, like a good sleeping bag. Some of them are more optional, like, Park, do I want a handkerchief or a do-rag? Why not both? And that stuff hopefully is pretty clearly marked. I try to give you some options without saying you should get this brand, because it's not about the brand, it's about the tool and how you know to use it and the quality level of it. All right. For gear, you can buy, borrow, rent. I have a little bit of extra stuff that you're welcome to. They're pretty sure you're never ever going to go backpacking again after this class. Save a little money. Just rent the stuff or borrow one of the ones that I have. That's fine. You're not going to offend me. You don't have to impress me with, we love Forest Rec. Yes, we do. We love it. How about you? Right. This class is for you, not for me. So what questions do you have?
I think you answered a lot of it.
Cool. Awesome. Probably not this summer on the long distance portion. We'll have a bunch of folks weighing in on the nearby stuff. Williard and Schoonover typically take a day or two just to talk exclusively about forest, hydro, and watershed stuff. Dr. Akamani typically takes a day or two to take us through some of the more kind of social, political, policy type things. And sometimes, we'll catch Nielsen for some rocket netting antics and stuff like that. What else? One question I have for y'all and for everybody else is, if anybody is currently a student worker and potentially interested in helping drive one of the vehicles. That helps me a lot because I can't drive two vehicles. That's probably a bad idea to, even hitch them together, and total disaster. We're gonna go down a really, really steep section of road, like a brake rotor meltingly steep section of road called Wolf Creek Pass. And I only know that because one year on summer camp, we melted the rotors on one of the buses, and it was sketchy as hell. So, with that said, if anybody's interested in helping drive, that would be super awesome. I help drive. Typically, we have a TA on this class as well. Just another kind of seasoned hand to help out. And, the two of us can get a bunch of the driving done, but it's not a good idea for us to tackle all of the driving. So typically, we try to give our drivers a break on the course fees. Just to kind of say thank you for that. So usually, depending on how many students we have going on camp, that's half or all of the fees. And just like an email, the cost for this, for both summer camps, either summer camp, it's a 6 credit hour regular class. So it counts like 2 classes because we meet kind of 24 hours a day for 4 weeks. And there's the course fee, which you also pay to the bursar, not to us. And that basically pays for gas and entrance fees at all of these places. So all told, it's a very cheap and efficient way to go on a trip like this. Like 5,000-mile run for several $100, not bad. But the course fee is, we don't actually charge it until we know how much we're actually going to spend. So it's typically between $500 and $750, with a hard limit at $750. I'm not allowed to go above that. So yeah, the weather and how that pushes us into or away from certain places that we have the option of going is the biggest determinant of, is it going to be a $500 course fee or a $750 course fee? And I just don't know yet because we haven't done the thing. Like in 2019, when we got 6 inches of snow on June 1st at the Grand Canyon, at the rim of the Grand Canyon, it was sunny and 72 at the bottom, with a 70-degree temperature differential between the top and bottom on some days, because that's what air density changes do. And we'll see lots of effects of that in and around the Rockies. So elevation-based senescence and force composition. So when we get a bunch of snow like that, and a lot of the gravel roads become impassable, even do high clearance vehicles, that pushes down the course fee because we're going to fewer places and we're like walking around more at the Grand Canyon. We're never going to run out of stuff to do either way, but just weather has the big effect on what that number ends up being. Okay? So there's that. What else? Other questions?
Yeah. How many people are going or supposed to be signed up?
Yeah, I don't know yet because this is the first version of the first meeting. So we got maybe 6 so far. I'm aware of 2 other folks that have expressed a very strong interest. And typically we have anywhere from 15 to most likely 25 on the high end. I've taken as many as like 35 of us one year on this Western trip, and that was fine. We were just in more vehicles. Yeah, so best guess something around 18 to 20. It's a nice, reasonably small group. We're pretty agile. Resource camp is a little bit bigger most years. Anywhere from, on the low end, 30 to 45, something like that. But again, it's different every year. And all that. So. Another question? Cool. Now is a good time to, especially once I have a chance to do our stuff for you. And I'll email it out there, but too. The gear list. Now's a good time to start pinging friends and your outdoorsy aunt or uncle to see what you can borrow and stuff like that. Like, again, I don't need you to spend money on a bunch of new titanium and spinnaker aramid fiber sil nylon stuff that's lighter than a fart that costs $1,000. You don't need to impress me. Like if it's all military surplus stuff that you got secondhand from Goodwill, nice, that works fine. And we'll actually stop. We'll have to stop somewhere near the beginning of our westward leg of the trip. Somebody is going to forget something, and it's going to be something they need to stay alive. So we're going to stop at some REI or something. But at that stage, we're pretty much stuck with whatever price REI wants to ask. And it's all very exciting and shiny and new under the glossy packaging and the bright lights. But yeah, I don't want anybody to hit sticker shock for summer. You know, like we're going to beat on our equipment pretty hard because we're using it. That's what it's for. So yeah. But again, now's a good time. So very commonly, a lot of people will head home for spring break and bring back a bunch of stuff that they already have, or that some of their old friends have, or that their parents have. And if you don't want to do any backpacking, you're good to go with a car camping style tent. That would be way too big and bulky and heavy to take backpacking. That option exists to you. That's still fine. There's always another thing to do around base camp. If you do want to go backpacking, then you're going to need a small backpacking focused tent for 1 or 2 people. And you can save a bunch of money and save a bunch of weight carried by using a small backpacking tent and splitting it across 2 people. But then you got to deal with somebody else. So if you're an introvert, then maybe that's not the right life choice. If you're a pretty social person, you're going to be real good friends with that person or hate their guts by the end. If you have a boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other, whatever, if it's taking this class as well, you know, if that's your thing, shack up with them. Would not recommend that. It's different. Because we run so hard on summer camp, it can fray people's patience with each other when specifically they're in some kind of a other than, you know, professional status together. If your Facebook is complicated on up, you know, maybe don't shack up together. You know, I'm not coming down on you if you do, but that's a consideration to undertake consciously. Any other questions? All right, cool. Feel free to bring your fly rod in a hard case. Feel free to bring your rock climbing gear, including PPE. Bring your skull bucket along. If you have any health considerations, we're gonna have a couple of folks who need refrigerated insulin come with us on this trip. I'm super excited about that because it's hard to manage those logistics, keeping things in a narrow temperature range on your own. But together as a group, we can tackle stuff like that and take care of our own really, really well. Keep them safe and healthy. So if you have any considerations like that I should know about just as I'm planning the class, so that's mobility stuff, that's dietary constraints or choices. It's stuff like food or other kinds of allergies, asthma. It's stuff like, you know, autoimmune conditions or anything like that. That's all fine. You know, it doesn't affect your grade or really how you take the class. It just helps if I know about that stuff further in advance so I can work with you on planning. And of course, that's all confidential between you and me, unless you decide to release that information to your classmates so that they can help you too. What else? Oh, if you have a particular religious or spiritual practice that requires you to, you know, attend a certain thing in a place, most of the time we're even able to wrangle that. Like some Catholics are super intent on getting to Mass every Sunday. We're going to be in some pretty wild spots, and there are certainly allowances for that in most practices of faith. But like there's a chapel in Grand Canyon Village, and it's an interfaith place that all the different organizations use. So that's the thing. What else? doing the left-handed cigarettes in states that are not legal is a federal crime in federal places. So don't put us in that position. And it'll all be fine. Cool. Unless there's anything else, we got 10 more minutes, whatever, but let's all head inside and print off some more copies of Xerox the gear list, pass those around for anybody who wants it, and call it good for today. Next week's meetings are the same as this, so don't worry about catching any of those. I'll probably have one or two others between now and the first week of May when it's exam week. So we can practice stuff like lighting the stoves without burning off our eyebrows, and it's super chill. Like, you get a new tent, we'll set up your tent together. You can figure it out in a pretty easy setting when it's not, snowing and raining sideways at the same time, 50 miles an hour at Great Sand Dunes at night, and you got bears circling the campsite. All of that hasn't all happened at once, ever before. And I've done a lot of sleeping bag nights, but could be our year.
Seems like it possibly could be.
Yeah, like 2020 reaches forward in time just to screw us one last time. So yeah, all right, let's head on back. If you are fine with the digital version, you're free to head out, especially if you gotta get to class. Otherwise, we'll just take a couple minutes and make some photocopies. This thing, whatever. But I'm super excited about this class. Oh God, we get to go. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we'll teach you take that down.
guys got the focus team going on? Awesome. How you doing? Somebody who kind of figured out what he wants and got it. Yeah. Somebody else did. Before. Yeah, so it's kind of a long list, but there's like 4 lines for your cell phone, mostly to start teaching some of the thought process behind some of these. So, yeah, I'm not actually, I'm gonna buy like 600 things. Borrow! Don't steal! Borrow! Whatever works. All right.
But you know, then I was just the I'm sure it does.
You or one of my assignments, whatever you're asking where that picture was, like, that was out in Yellowstone on the Continental Divide Trail.
Ah,
Yeah.
cool.
So the other question I had was, so I'm a like transfer student. I'm almost 30. So looking at jobs like especially like the trail crews or like being on a crew, I have to admit it's giving me anxiety.
Why?
Just because of the fact that it's like, you know, it's like seeing as like, you know, there's a guy who like almost 30 compared to like the guy or someone like, you know, younger 20s. So I guess in the hiring aspect, is that an issue or
No, you
can it
probably
be?
got a competitive advantage actually because you've had the chance to go through more experience that might be relevant.
Yeah, and that's where the other side comes from because, you know, looking at it, all my past experience is automotive. So it's like, and I've heard from a few people too. It's like that's actually a good thing, especially going through the Forest Service or like you're doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
For sure. Because like, and I mean, even like
if you want to do motor pool stuff.
Right. You know, and I didn't know about this that, you know, even getting a job in the motor pool can be beneficial. Even
yeah, so think about national forests as like, you know, vast wild places, and they are.
Yeah.
But like imagine how awesome the motor pool guy has to be for Denali National Park. They've got one road in Denali.
Oh yeah.
It's 70 miles long total. It's not even paved. But they've got 3 months and a whole bunch of heavy road construction equipment to keep that road patched and operational and regraded all the time and crazy frosting and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that guy or gal's got to be a ninja.
Yeah. I mean, from my own experience too, it's like, you know, working in Yellowstone and working with them, it's like, you know, we see what, you know, our visitors, their vehicles go through, so it's just like on the terminal with the NPS vehicles or Forest Service.
Right, yeah.
Vehicles going through. So,
And things are going to be super wild right now. Biden just signed that executive order that all federal vehicles are going to be electric.
Yeah.
By whenever it is. But
yeah.
so that's cool. Like that means there's a real need for some, you know, fresh blood to get in there with any kind of a background or inkling on, okay, so this isn't a diesel truck. Is a plug-in electric, but what do I even do with this?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess too, it's just like that imposter syndrome, because it's like, going to something where it's like I'm not really that familiar with, so it's yeah, it's fun.
Hey man, you're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
I promise you're gonna be okay.
Thanks.
You bring a lot more to the table again than somebody just fresh out of high school. Is going to be the largest pool of your competitors, but they're not really any sort of a competition to you.
Yeah.
So
So and like filling out the USA job, the resumes on there, my automotive stuff on there. I'm assuming that.
Yeah, so it's the specific technical training and experience of that, but it's also the problem solving, the reasoning, the sequencing of difficult tasks. Like, in order to get at this particular battery on this ridiculous European import, I gotta disassemble half the engine, and then swap it out and whatever. So there's a way to kind of supplement the hard technical bits with the so-called soft, like the reasoning, the problem solving, the executive function stuff that they really need, but they much less rarely see on those resumes. So yeah, you can offer both. All right.
Appreciate the
Cool. You got this. See you, man.